Hi, and welcome to Gin with Gwynne. I'm Oliver Gwynne, and this is where we talk about marketing, philosophy, and data. This week, personal data, because we're going to talk about LinkedIn asking for your passport to verify your profile. What do you think about that? What's next? A blood sample. A lot of people are uncomfortable with this, and I completely understand the reasons why, but I wanted to have a look into the numbers to make my own decision. And I thought I would share that in a sort of informal way with you. So the first question I asked myself was, is this really a problem? Have I come across fake profiles on LinkedIn? Yes. Have I reported people? Yes. But this is not a regular occurrence to my mind. Every couple of months, maybe there's one, but certainly not to the point where it was visible to me, and certainly not to the point where on other profiles where you see quite a lot of fake people, it was so noticeable on LinkedIn. Now, I had a look into the numbers, and in 2022, in the first half of 2022, LinkedIn reported that they filtered out 16.4 million profiles at the registration stage that they deemed to be fakes. But in the second half of 2022, that number more than doubled to 44.7 million. And that's a lot. That's a big rise in a short amount of time. And it points to a growing problem. And I can only imagine that over the years, with AI imagery, AI videos, AI text, that it's going to get harder and harder for us to tell if somebody is real. It's completely possible for me today to do this video as an AI avatar, and I'd probably gesticulate a little bit less, but you might not be able to tell. So I had sort of assumed that there wasn't a problem, and this was sort of a longer term thought from LinkedIn, but it seems that actually, yes, it's a problem on the platform and they're trying to sort it out early. Now, the main thing that I've seen people say is that they do not trust LinkedIn with something as valuable as their passport information. And let's not make any qualms about it. A passport is very, very important. You can do a lot of damage if you want to with that information. It's really a secure piece of information that you shouldn't be sharing lightly. And I think it's completely natural for people to question whether or not LinkedIn really needs that. Now, I did want to say that in theory, LinkedIn is not touching your passport information. So a lot of people have said that LinkedIn recently, 40 million profiles were leaked and all their information got leaked to the web. But in theory, LinkedIn is not touching that information. It goes to a third party, and that third party depends on which country you're in. They process it. Typically, the people who are processing it already have your passport information, and then they verify you. And all that LinkedIn is getting is basically that verification. I've seen a few people sort of say that, well, I don't really trust the process. I might trust that third party, but I don't trust the process, the way that the data is being handled. Maybe people could get that information, or maybe at some point LinkedIn will decide, oh, actually, maybe this would be useful. As a data person, I can say yes, that is completely possible. I don't know that LinkedIn would want to do that, because if it's found guilty, I think they would be a huge lawsuit against them. I'm not sure that the data within your passport would be super useful to them as a business. It's more useful to sort of other people. The only use case I could see in verifying your passport for LinkedIn as a business is that maybe instead of giving your passport when you start a job, they'd already verified you, and so they could streamline that process, and that would improve their overall sort of job offering, which is a core part of their money making scheme, I guess. So from a point of view of, should I be worried that LinkedIn is going to get that information and then somehow it will get leaked or they will abuse that information? In theory, the answer is no. I'm not going to say it's not impossible. I'm not going to say it's not something that you should worry about or consider. The second question I asked myself is, well, is it worth it? Is it worth the potential risk of giving away passport information to LinkedIn, which is essentially a social networking site? Let's be honest. To a lot of people, they're not even active on LinkedIn unless they're looking for a job. They don't read your messages. I've seen some stats, and LinkedIn has put out the stat that, hey, if you verify, you'll get 60% more responses to your messages, or more people are likely to view your profile and trust you, and all of this kind of stuff. And I'm not sure that I necessarily believe that. I'm not sure that people are looking at profiles and thinking that they don't believe that people on LinkedIn are real. Um, I would say that that's very rare that you're questioning if somebody is a real person. And typically, the people who seem fake, they're in sales jobs. Probably they are companies that might use fake profiles basically because they don't want to damage their own personal ones. And so they create fake people to do that for them. I don't think that most of the people that we talk to or we interact with on a day-to-day basis are fake in any way. And so I'm not really sure that this idea that, oh, you'll get more responses because people will trust you is necessarily true. I can believe that from an algorithmic point of view, they are willing to boost your content a little bit more to say sort of thank you for verifying. But do I trust that? I'm not sure that I really do. I've been using LinkedIn for more than 12 years, I think. And I'm sure, like many of you, I play the LinkedIn game as well as I can. I used to run a business and used to post on LinkedIn very actively. I used to write very actively. And yes, I noticed a huge difference with my profile getting seen in terms of people connecting with me and having good interactions and ultimately leading to business with people. And I try to do those things now. But I'm sure, like a lot of you, I'm kind of sick of playing the LinkedIn game. It seems that the game is rigged to people who are more influential. It might be that they're pop culture figures or they're in the media more. And so, yes, to a degree, I can understand that their profile gets more views and their posts get more views. But it really seems as though those people in bigger companies who have bigger budgets for things like hiring on LinkedIn, which is very expensive, and for advertising, are getting boosted anyway. And it's not necessarily a fair game to smaller companies. And so, do I believe that LinkedIn is going to boost your content just because you're verified? I'm not sure I do. I'd be very skeptical about that. The third thing I ask myself is, what's the future? Are more and more platforms going to start asking for verification via passports? Bear in mind that passports cost money, so that means that people who are on lower incomes or below the poverty line potentially don't have a passport. There's a huge stat about a third of America doesn't have a passport. And so are you potentially sort of discriminating against people who don't have the funds to travel and don't have the money for a passport? Is that going to hurt their job prospects in the long term? Is it a case that AI is such a threat that we have no choice in the long run? We're going to have to verify through some sort of official document. Now, I think there are lots of other options that LinkedIn could have used. When you join a dating site, they typically ask you to pose um, in a particular way. You have to do an L pose, and then they take a picture and they verify it. Sometimes you have to hold up a sheet of paper with a phrase or a code on it. And I think that that would have been fine for LinkedIn, and I would have been comfortable doing that. I'm not sure that handing over an official document like a passport is suitable for social media. It's not a place where that seems particularly necessary to me, unless you start thinking long term that that's the only way, because those images can be faked, because you can Photoshop these types of things. And you could potentially make fake videos that can pass those tests. And so maybe long term, we will have no choice but to verify this. But to try and end on a bit of a positive, I did also think, well, if this is the first stage and it's something that's going to be sort of a necessary evil, perhaps we can start integrating more detail and we can start verifying other things that I think would actually be positive. So I don't know about anybody else, but this January, my social media feeds were absolutely chocker full of fake gurus and courses and just do this one thing and you can 5x your business. And it was very tiresome very quickly. And I blocked a lot of accounts because of it. And sometimes I can't help myself. I just want to have a look at some of the claims that people make. Recently, I saw an agency owner who said he ran $100 million agency. And when I looked on Company's House, he had made an EBITDA loss of 0.8 million. And I was like, good stuff, good stuff. And so maybe as a positive way to try and end this, in the future, we can start more easily verifying the claims that people make. If they have all these videos of them in jets or in supercars, we can verify their wealth, and maybe they'll be willing to do it to show us, hey, actually, I did make this money and it's not inherited or something like that. Recently, my football club, Sheffield United Football Club, there was a takeover, and they found that somebody who was trying to buy the football club, he had CCGs, county court judgments for a property that he had rented and then not paid his rent. And a lot of people said, well, he's a multimillionaire. Maybe he just forgot, or he doesn't really care about this small amount of money. It's like nothing to him. But it was one of the things that blocked him from buying the club. And then it turned out that his money really wasn't in his bank account. He didn't have that to spend. His company wasn't quite legitimate. And he was found guilty of fraud. And I see more and more of that kind of stuff happening, where in the past there were lots of information in different silos, and it's going to be joined together, and that's going to benefit and hurt people in different ways. So if you are, for example, looking for a job, or you're unemployed and you need help from the government, they can then more easily plug you into different systems, and you can get the help that you need without having to go to lots of different places, perhaps automatically, which would be good. And we can get people back into work and healthy and happy quicker. But on the other side, if you do something on the internet that people don't like, if you are perhaps involved in some sort of scam, or you get found guilty of something, that information will also be on your record and more easily available to people in the longer term, which could hurt your chances. And so there's always a trade-off with data and the availability of information, that we're all going to have to ask ourselves the question of, where are we comfortable? As for me, am I going to verify? I think ultimately I probably will verify, but I will do a little bit more research into who is the organization that is going to be handling that data and what's the process involved. And I would encourage anybody, if you're not feeling comfortable, do the same, do the research. And I'll be interested to know your thoughts. Did you verify in the end, or is LinkedIn just not worth it? Thanks for watching, and hope you tune in next week.